Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Hope y'all been having a great Friday so far. It is the weekend, so that is the good news. But there's still weather to talk about as the tropics continue to very slowly, kind of get more and more active. It looks like we're going to get more active in the second half of the month, but there is a lot to talk about right now as there is activity ongoing. Nothing is formed. We don't have Fred or anything. We don't have a named storm out there, but we have actually three areas of interest. The big area of interest has actually went down some, but there's a couple waves out in front of it. And I think the National Hurricane Center, and we're all trying to figure out what's going to happen here, is it looks like there's kind of multiple vortices, multiple tropical waves, if you will, that it has a chance to develop. But there's a good chance that maybe none of them will develop. In fact, the tropical wave, the big one we've been talking about over the last few days, actually has the chances have dropped. The model guidance has over the last 24 hours have really dropped. I wouldn't say significantly, but it's definitely slowly dropped as far as any kind of long-term development and any sort of tropical storm or hurricane development. Now, I do think there's still a chance for a weak tropical storm to come out of one of these systems, especially the one that's further west that has a higher chance of developing. But we'll talk about that here. If you guys have not subscribed, definitely hit the subscribe button. We're getting into some very active times. I know my setup probably isn't quite as appealing as some of these other people who do weather. There's a lot of big YouTube accounts out there, but keep in mind, guys, I do this, and I do hope to get my setup much better, but I put any money I make into making off YouTube into trying to make my stuff better. But it's not like I make thousands of dollars a month doing this or anything like that. It's a very slow process. I'm also a storm chaser, so I get out there and nitty gritty and try to get action for you guys. So definitely follow along. I do storm chasing videos too. Thank you all for the amazing support. Like the video if you like it, and let's get going here. So we're going to start off by looking at the National Hurricane Center. The latest update is to 8 p.m. I actually got you an 8 p.m. update this evening. So this is the new one right here. 20% chance to develop out in front of this higher chance, which is now down to actually a 50% chance to develop in the next 5 days. It was at a 70% chance this time yesterday, so it's dropped a good bit. This is for the next 5 days. So chances are dropping for this wave, and there's just a lot of guidance everywhere just that really is having issues. Keep in mind, the conditions out here are very marginal still. You still don't have a very favorable phase that's came into place. These storms are kind of forming a little bit further north into unfavorable conditions like lower sea surface temperatures, the water's cooler, and the conditions are just very marginal right there. Right now, there's still some dry air. There's a good bit of dry air, Saharan dust that's in place. There's a little bit of shear, but that's not really a big problem. But the monsoon trough is a big thing that I've actually been learning about over the last few days. And that is actually a big player into this, as it's not set in stone out there. It's kind of everywhere. And it's a big player. It's kind of almost, I would say, like a conveyor belt where tropical moisture likes to come up, convection fires up. And that monsoon trough is really where the tropical development likes to fire up. So that is kind of playing a role in things are just struggling right now. The Eastern Pacific is still the hot spot right now. It's going to be interesting as we get into the next week or so, how quickly we can get a favorable phase into the Atlantic, and if we do. But I really think we are. I think it's inevitable. It's going to happen. So we'll flip back to this. This is the big-time tropical wave. But here's the multiple areas of broad rotation or circulation. A couple tropical waves kind of up in here, and also really all this is doing is trying to help this one out almost. It's almost creating an avenue of moisture, more moist air, but nothing really looks great out here. It does look a little bit more active than a couple weeks ago, but you got a pretty broad area of a tropical wave, but it doesn't. The guidance on it is really starting to tick away, but it still has a chance to get to a tropical storm, and this is kind of the appetizer, the tone setter, if you will, for going forward. Things could change over the weekend. Things could certainly change overnight, and I'm going to keep you all updated on this. But let's finish this off real here. We're not going to get super detailed in this video because not a ton has changed. But here's the paths. It's just going to keep cruising. Whatever it is going to keep cruising into the North Atlantic. And this is 92L. This is a stronger wave that has more of a higher chance to develop. But check it out. We looked at this last night, and almost all of these model intensity guidances had this getting into a tropical storm status. But now only a couple do. So it's dropping. All guidance is kind of going away from this having any kind of significant development. Well, take a look at the latest GFS here. Moving forward, check it out. Multiple low pressures. You got even one right here, and one right here. All these have a chance to develop. Not a high chance though, but this is the higher chance right here, the one that's further further east. I might have said west by accident a little earlier, but the one that's further east. But that's not a very low pressure right there at 10-11. That's probably not even a tropical storm. In fact, it probably isn't. But then after you get into early to midway next week, you have a low pressure that pops off. But after that, there's not really any tropical development. The western, geez, I'm getting my directionals mixed up. I'm sorry, guys, my bad. But the eastern Pacific is popping off still because there's still favorable conditions out there. The conditions, the phasing, the MJO phase is still out there that's more favorable for tropical development. But you get into about mid to late part next week, and there's still going to be waves moving off North Africa, and there's still going to be marginal conditions for development. But right now, we get going there in time to about 10 days out. This is, I think, when you get about 10 days out, you need to start watching this area right in here. I really think as we get to about mid-month, I think we need to start watching the Western Atlantic, the areas of the Caribbean down here for any kind of tropical development. We need to watch this. I'm not sure, but I really got a vibe here that in the next couple weeks we need to start watching the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. But here's the latest GFS, the GFS ensembles. Notice there's 1, 2, 3 areas. So it's active in a way, but at the same time, the activity doesn't have a high chance to have any kind of long-term development, or really no chance at all for right now to affect land. So there's still areas of interest, but really the biggest areas out there just doesn't have any chance of long-term development. You look at the European model getting into this weekend, notice the waves, notice that it just doesn't really ever develop 92L, honestly. But you notice there's another big time wave coming off as we get into midway next week. This makes the entire haul across the tropical Atlantic, gets into all the way almost to the Lesser Antilles as we get into next weekend, and it starts sneaking into the Caribbean, and it looks like it's strengthening. And these are the paths you have to watch. Now, this is 10 days out, but this thing is, we need to watch to see if the GFS catches on to this wave, because this might end up being Fred. I know I said the last couple videos that 92L was probably going to end up being Fred. I was wrong, and I'll admit that. It still could be. It really could be. But I think the chances of that are dwindling down. But here we go. The European wants to show another wave behind 92L, behind the one we've been talking about, that makes the long-term track across the tropical Atlantic and then sneaks into the Caribbean at day 10, which would be next Monday. You try to look at the European ensembles, the EPS, to see if it has any backup from that wave. And it has a little bit. Here it is. There's a little bit. And it's still picking up on a little bit of energy in front of this. But it picks up on that some. But not a ton. And this is 360 hours out. So the signal has definitely kind of dwindled away here a little bit. And you look at the sea surface temperatures in the tropical Atlantic. You know, there's just a sharp cutoff. I know that's only a few degrees, but that few degrees can make a difference in tropical development, especially when you start to get into kind of the low 80s for sea surface temperatures. But you know, at the end of the day, they're still favorable for tropical development in this area. But you know, a lot of these waves right now, the vortices are wanting to kind of drag this a little bit north. So we're kind of have to watch here. We look at the water vapor here. There's an area of dry air right here. And here's kind of the monsoon trough, if you will. And you have the tropical wave right here. And it's got enough moisture kind of around the area. But, you know, eventually it's probably going to get sucked into some dry air. Like I said, there's just not high confidence of any kind of highly favorable conditions out here. There really isn't. And it's starting to really show more and more. Now you look at kind of the moisture plumes. You look right on here, there's some dry air. But this is the European. You look going forward. big time areas. You can tell where the tropical waves are based off just this European run. Here's one that makes it all the way across the tropical Atlantic, and here comes another one. So in a nutshell here, I think we'll start to get more and more tropical waves to have chances of development, and I think that we'll continue to have areas of interest that pop up. But here's the thing is I just don't think that they have any long-term development potential until we get into a more favorable phase that promotes and lowers shear, that gets rid of the dry air and causes a consistent monsoon trough that definitely is a promoting factor for tropical moisture. If we can't get that, then who knows? Maybe this isn't as quite as an active hurricane season as maybe what's predicted, which happens sometimes. That's the thing with the weather; it's a constant learning thing. I know I've learned a ton just in the past year, but we'll continue to watch this. Things could change over the weekend. We might, by the time I make a video Sunday night, we might be talking about Tropical Storm Fred. You just don't know. So I'll keep y'all updated. I think active times is coming up for sure. So hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. That's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. Y'all have a blessed night and a great start to your weekend.